Hey.
Hi, how's it going? I'm Steve Sharp. I'm the president-elect for the Pennsylvania School Counselor Association. I'm here right now with Phyllis Jordan, Editorial Director at Future-Ed. Phyllis, do you think you'd tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Sure. As Steve said, I'm Phyllis Jordan. Future-Ed is a think tank at Georgetown's McCourt School of Public Policy. We look at the future of education. And one thing we pay a lot of attention to are the non-academic indicators of student success, and chronic absenteeism is a big issue. I've written several reports on that. The latest thing I've written, I worked with a nonprofit called Attendance Works, and we developed what we call the attendance playbook. And it goes, there's a lot with so many states now considering attendance as a accountability metric. There's a big push to get more kids back to school and attending regularly. But there's a lot of people who are doing things that have no evidence of success, and there are a lot of things that work that need to be researched. So what we did is we took 22 of the most popular approaches to improving attendance. We looked at what the research showed about it. We evaluated the research based on what ESSA has different levels of evidence. The federal law has different levels of evidence. And we then broke it down into tiers. And what we found, and this is important for you as a counselor, is that a lot of what works for improving attendance is about improving school climate and school culture and building connections and relationships with caring adults at schools. I mean, for so long, we've considered attendance sort of the province of the truancy officer. Like, this kid missed school, they're in trouble, we're going to fine them or whatever, suspend them for missing instructional time. And with the advent, sort of the past decade, we've sort of shifted our emphasis to chronic absenteeism, which counts all absences, including illness and any excused or disciplinary absences. So when you look at attendance like that, you realize, your solutions have to be different, and they have to be more about building connections to kids and making school a place where they feel like they belong.
Mhm. Just talking about the solutions, can you just overview as far as from a attendance standpoint, what have been some of the best strategies that we've seen in the past?
Well, just in recent years, there's been something called nudge letters, which are letters you send home to parents, and you just say, hey, here's how many days your kid has missed. And so many times parents have no idea how many days their child has missed. And these improve attendance. There's mixed evidence on incentives, but especially in the early grades, so perfect
Mhm.
attendance awards or little pencils or things, little prizes for kids can really get kids excited about attendance. In the sort of, and that's kind of what you would call your tier one universal strategies. On the tier two, the more targeted strategies, mentoring is a really
Mhm.
successful way of building that connection and having the kid know that somebody is paying attention if they don't show up for school. Another approach, which isn't really aimed at attendance, but seems to improve attendance a lot, are these, well, they have different names, but you could call them social emotional development or character development or youth engagement programs, things like
Mhm.
um, being a man, um, positive action, I think is the name of one.
Mhm.
These are aimed at, sort of the kid developing resilience and developing confidence. And they're often oriented toward minority kids, boys, a lot of programs for African-American boys. These programs also culturally relevant programs that are aimed ethnic studies program
Mhm.
at San Francisco. All of these have a big improvement in attendance. And then, there's the tier three with kids who need a lot of help, the homeless kids or the kids who are asthmatic or the kids who just can't get to school because
Yeah.
they're moving around a lot. And, this takes usually beyond what the school can provide, but it takes good coordination with community
Mhm.
organizations and collaboration and interagency case management.
Particularly when we talk about school closures and these extended stay here in Pennsylvania, we were actually just closed indefinitely as of this conversation, actually. What are some of your biggest concerns for students? I hear the connectedness piece already. I hear in addition to that, some things as far as just access to resources in regards to transients and stuff like that. But what are some of those other big concerns you would have for students throughout the period of these closures?
Yeah, well, I would say a couple things. You mentioned connectedness. I mean, when kids are losing their connection to their friends or losing their connection to their teachers, it sounds like in Pennsylvania, in most places, you won't be coming back this year, but next fall, how reluctant are those kids going to be to come to school? How much are they going to want to come? Um, there's a subset of kids, or there are a lot of kids who have anxiety and depression, and this often manifests itself in what's known as school refusal, which is exactly as it
Hmm.
sounds, refusing to go to school. It's not quite truancy because it's not just the kids skipping off merrily. They're often parents home with them trying to get them to come. But
Hmm.
I just worry that this whole situation is going to increase the anxiety, increase the depression, and increase the issues of school refusal when kids do come back to school. They've gotten out of the habit of school now. Um, a third concern is equity. All of these issues
Hmm.
affect disadvantaged children more than the more affluent kids who have more resources at home. They have tutors, they have their parents are likely home working at home. Um, Already with missed school time, we see a profound impact on disadvantaged kids. There's a one study that looked at kindergartners and the development of their literacy skills, and it showed that the kids who were chronically absent had weaker literacy skills, but the impact was 75% greater for low income kids because they seem to need school more. They don't have the resources at home. And then if you look at things, studies like into summer learning loss, which is probably, this is more analogous to where the whole school is out. The disadvantaged kids, low income kids, they're the ones who lose the most learning over the summer. They fall behind in reading, they fall behind in math. So, this is like one big long summer. And there's going to be some real equity issues that schools are going to need to address when they come back.
Yeah, I was in a conversation with Sheldon Akins, who does the Leading Equity podcast, and we were just trying to brainstorm a little bit. And like, our disadvantaged students are more likely to be absorbing like caregiver roles for younger siblings. We have students in our own district who, with the extended time off, had actually gotten jobs at like grocery stores and at like Walmart to help to subsidize what has been a loss of income in their families as well. In addition to that, let alone being a working parent that might have to provide education and still be committed to their job at the same time. Access to resources, material resources, and the list just, I think, is unfathomable at this point.
Right. Right. And eat hunger, just simple
Yeah.
things like that. There's so many ways that school helps kids. I think about, mental health counseling. A lot of kids, this,
Hmm.
are getting their support from their counselors or being connected through telehealth. And things like asthma. There's a lot of schools where they've made it so that school nurses give the asthma medication in the morning, but they're not, because that way they're sure all the kids get their asthma meds. But now that's, not, that's not
Mm.
happening. So there's so many ways that it's affecting kids. And a lot of what the research, when we were doing the attendance playbook, a lot of what the research showed is a counselor was really a key player in in coordinating a lot of these strategies. That the counselor often uh, can approach a child or a student in a way that's non-confrontational,
Hmm.
and talk to a parent about a problem. A lot of the times, the issues are something like transportation. They can't get to
Hmm.
school, or illness, or there was a kid who I read about who had to give her grandmother her insulin shot every morning at like
Yeah.
10:30, and would not come to school till 10:30. And they tried, doing all these things, but this child was not going to change her mind because she needed to give her grandmother that insulin shot. When they figured it out, they got a home health aide through some Medicaid agency or something, and she was given the insulin shot. So some of these things are not rocket science, but they need somebody to be the detective and figure out what's going on that the student is missing so much school. And that seems to be where a counselor can come in.
Yeah, so I hear like just our individual advisement, individual counseling for students. In addition to that, like our family engagement and parenting education that we provide for students, and then just basic resource coordination. These are
Yeah.
invaluable tools that counselors are uniquely positioned to provide. And I would sign off on every one of those. I think that's
Yeah. And I would say going forward, you have your first 9 months of the school year, or how many, not that many, 7 months of the school year, you have
hmm
chronic absenteeism data from that. You know the kids who are missing too much school.
hmm
And when you're come back, whenever that is, that's information you can use to arm you for who needs the support. Who do we need to be reaching out to? Who do we need to be watching out for? And these can be, so the data you have already can help inform what your response is going to be. And
Yeah,
who,
that seems like an indispensable tool right now. Are there any other ways that you would suggest as far as identifying students of concern when it comes to either engagement now as students are doing distance learning, or when it comes to students whenever we are able to return back to school, as far as identifying those students and supporting them?
I think, that the chronic absenteeism is a key
Yeah.
thing. I think, yeah, I just think just identifying that, and you already would know the kids who get those lunch meals, those are going to be kids to watch out for too. I think that, the attendance in your first month, whenever that first month is going to
Yeah.
be, really, that can predict the whole year. And it will be interesting to compare that to past years. Like, are there kids who are popping up as new problems,
hmm
who didn't have an attendance problem before, but suddenly are scared to go to school? I mean, I don't know how, many kids are going to be rattled by this whole stay at home thing and want to stay at home. There are already kids who want to stay at home. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that would be, your the chronic absenteeism data would be a good guide. Your kids who are, already in housing insecurity and health issues too.
Just hearing you talk about it, thinking about it for the first time, is that just that stark juxtaposition of things is like our students who are going to realistically have significant needs or suffer trauma throughout this experience, and then also are going to be our students who had a really great experience not being in school.
I know. I know.
And
You have to stream all their favorite Netflix shows and
yeah,
hang out
yeah.
with their friends on Zoom or wherever they hang out.
Tiger King is incredibly charismatic, let me tell you.
Oh yeah, I'm hearing Tiger King.
Yeah. Um, we started talking about a few different things. I think, again, I really appreciate it. Like looking at our existing data, taking time as we reintegrate to look at the data the students are there. Those are great practices. What are some other either universal strategies that you think would be beneficial for students, either through the course of the school closures or when we talk about re-engaging students afterwards?
Well, and I think a lot of what you do, to create a good school climate is
hmm
important. Getting attendance back up or up. And I think that can be large and small. There
hmm
are principals who stand outside the school door and greet students every day. There are teachers who do the, high five, hug at the
hmm
door. And, I will say there, when we included that in our attendance playbook, we did not find anybody has done research into it. Though I do find that there's research that giving that handshake at the door creates better school climate, and there's research that shows better school climate creates better attendance. So I think you can do the arithmetic,
I'm down.
whatever, algebra, and end up with A plus B equals C. Um, so, I think a lot of the work you do, but I think that, if you have a mentoring program,
hmm
use that to focus
hmm
on the kids you think are going to be problems. If you don't have a mentoring problem or mentoring program, start one. This is, you have time now that with mentoring, you need time to decide what you want to do. Do you want to use internal mentors like a counselor or a school nurse, or do you want to use volunteers, or you want to use older students? Whatever you choose, you need to do some training. If it's volunteers, you need to do background checks. This is some dead time to do that in. Um, I would say, celebrations and, lots of welcome back things and
hmm
ways that you can connect kids. If you're a high school, make sure every freshman has a big brother or big sister identified who will help them.
hmm
And just, the really the strategy, I mean, there are strategies like, and this one might be a good one too. One of those strategies we identify as a safe walk to school. For
Hmm.
elementary kids, that's often, it's just unsafe because of traffic, and these walking school buses where teachers and parents walk from school to school and pick up kids, and they all walk to
Hmm.
school together. That's great for getting laggards who are not showing up, but it's also great for building a little community for the children. They get to know each other as they walk. Parents
Hmm.
get to know each other. That's a good strategy. For older kids, that's, you don't really need to do that, but there are safe passage programs where people stand on the street corners and make sure the kids, there's no violence or anything going on. So, you know, those are some of the more traditional attendance strategies. But I think that to the extent you can just make it a great place where kids want to come every day, it's just, it's basically the same thing you want to do to make your school great. You want to make the curriculum engaging so kids want to come and so that kids learn. You want to make it a welcoming environment so kids want to come, and you want to, have a culture where everybody believes they can succeed and everybody feels like they belong. These are things that every school wants, and they are also the things that improve attendance. So
I know you and I have discussed this before, and I'll be honest, the strategies that you're providing right now are fantastic strategies that can think be used across settings and across distances. But I'm going to ask the question again, like, how do you build culture? How do you build community when the underlying message for weeks, months, or longer has been being around people is unsafe?
yeah, I don't know.
Neither do I, but
That's
let's
a
hear your
really
answer.
good question. I don't know. I think, and even as I was saying a few minutes ago about the high fives and the hugs,
Hmm.
yeah, is anybody going to do high fives and hugs?
Hmm.
You put the hand sanitizer in after
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
five. Um, I don't know.
Or a 1x5 bleach solution after every high five. The dip. No, there's emerging body of practice out there. I see like virtual communities for just check-in hashtag challenges that are happening. Things that create as much as we have proximity when we have our physical communities. The reality is that community is about building that common narrative at this point. I think
Yeah.
the different
Well,
ways we can do that.
and as we were talking, there is some research into hand washing strategies and what effect it has on attendance. And lo and behold, teaching little kids how to wash their hands actually improves attendance. And so does cleaning the school really well, because as Maddox and stuff have a lot of triggers if you've got, rat droppings or any of that kind of stuff. So, I guess you could teach hand washing even to older kids. Make a big deal about hand washing. Make a big deal. Get your janitorial staff really jazzed about cleaning, and those
Hmm.
things do contribute. Also, ventilation, which I would imagine ventilation probably contributes to disease, but it also, if you have good ventilation, you have better attendance. So there's that
As
whole.
counselors, we're all about helping people vent all the time. Thank you. I
All right.
work in a middle school.
All right.
Uh, you provide, I think, a wealth of resources to consider as real effective strategies, both as far as across distance learning and whenever we talk about re-engaging our students.
Mhm.
Are there any other strategies that you think would be helpful for some of those more intensive students that might have needs, or anything else as far as just general good practice?
Yeah, well, I think for kids with school refusal, the sort of depression and anxiety issues, there are a lot of protocols. The whole cognitive behavioral therapy approach, which I don't know if you do as counselors, or you find help folks find counselors, but there are certain protocols about that I think we're probably going to talk with some other folks about that. But I also think, mostly for the tier 3 kids, the kids who really need a lot of support, it's kind of case by case. That's sort of the
Yeah.
nature of it. Some of them will be anxious, some of them will be sick, some of them will be pregnant. There's just
Hmm.
it's going to have to be case by case. And I think, there'll probably be more kids in that second and third tier than there were beginning of the last year.
Yeah.
More kids to be watching out for.
Yeah. I guess are there any other, as we're just kind of overviewing all these things, are there any other resources you'd like to point to or highlight for school counselors or other professionals to consider when it comes to understanding not just student attendance at this point, but I guess student engagement, I guess, is what we're going to be talking about.
Well, I would point to two things.
Mm-hmm.
One, and they're both Future-Ed products, but I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff out there. We did a report last summer called Teacher Mindsets, and
Mm-hmm.
this will be at no surprise to any teachers, but there's always focus on getting kids to have better growth mindsets and better learning mindsets. But research shows that if the teachers aren't on board with this, the students aren't. And there's so many things teachers can do to influence student success. A big part of it is relationships. A big part of it is giving the right kind of feedback so kids think they're smart. And a big part of it is challenging kids. There's connections to families. The home visiting is a good connection for social emotional learning and for attendance. Again, you don't want to be doing home visits right now. And that may be something that's an issue in the fall too. Do people want you in there? But those are good strategies. Another resource or something folks should look at, and this is Pennsylvania has a very strong program for this, are school climate surveys.
Mm-hmm.
We did a report, I co-wrote that with someone from RAND about what do school climate surveys tell us. There's a lot of, the report focused on 8 states that are using them for accountability purposes, but we're sort of caution against that. Pennsylvania does not use it for accountability, but it does do surveys, and there's a lot you can look at to see how your kids feel about school and how they feel about themselves as learners. And these are really important factors for student success. And kids, there was a study that just came out in Chicago that looked at high schools that do a good job promoting test scores, high schools that do a good job promoting, looking at school surveys, what they called hard work qualities, like I work hard, I believe I can do anything. And then there was schools that did a good job promoting what they called social well-being, which was like, I feel like I belong at school. I have a lot of friends. People respect me here. And then they broke it out by school indicators, and they found like the schools that did a good job improving test scores did a good job improving test scores. The schools that did a good job improving hard work did a good job improving grades, graduation rates, all sorts of important factors. And the schools that did a good job improving social well-being, improved attendance, had fewer disciplinary infractions, had fewer arrests. So, school climate surveys can tell you something. You shouldn't put too much reliance on them, but it's good for counselor. You probably already do this, but take a look at your school's latest surveys, see where kids' heads are, and see break it down by race and gender, see what's going on, and use that to guide yourself going forward.
Yeah, I mean, really, with so much uncertainty about what's happening out there in the homes right now, I think a chance to really check in and have deliberate and intentional conversations about our students and our students' experience. I mean, that's some of the most valuable data. And at the same time, like with so many things that are outside of our control, that social emotional piece, we understand. Elias and Tobias in 2018 did like a rule book when it came to emotional learning, and like their instructions for school counselors are really how we take lead when it comes to social emotional learning is by not just giving the staff a proficiency of social emotional learning, but give them a deep understanding of social emotional learning. So really, again, the more we're able to engage our staff members to take lead in those pieces as well, the better we support our students, and the more that we understand our students' narrative, the better we're able to take action collaboratively with that.
And bringing that back to the current situation, as teachers try to do this virtual learning, that's a really important piece of it. It's the social emotional piece. I mean, connecting with the kids either in smaller groups or one-on-one, just to say, how are you doing? Is everything okay? I mean, that's a really crucial piece of what teachers and counselors need to do doing right now.
This conversation has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time. Do you have any other words of insight or any other words of advice for any of our listeners right now?
No, but if anybody has any questions, you can go to futureed.org. It's future-ed.org. You can find my email there, and you can find all the reports I talked about.
Perfect. Last question. We're asking it to everyone on all these roundtables. Phyllis, what are you doing to take care of yourself these days?
Jigsaw puzzles. I stopped watching television, trying to stay off social media. I just get books and jigsaw puzzles. That's what I do.
That's fantastic. Yeah, right now I've been playing a lot of chase my children around the house and doing hide and go seek, which is alarming because I'm too big for most of the hiding spaces, and they're becoming better hiders.
Oh no.
And yeah, I don't know right now. But regardless, I want to thank you for your time and expertise. It's much appreciated. Thank you for your work and all the work that Future Ed does.
Good luck to you and all your members.
Thank you.
I wonder how it goes. You'll have to get back with me and let me know.
Sounds good. Unfortunately, you're probably stuck with me at this point. I'm sorry. On behalf of the Pennsylvania School Counselors Association, I'm Steve Sharp. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected.
All right, will do. Bye.